But let's move over to the other side. You've touched on the Viper position a little bit. You talked about Isaiah Foskey. Obviously he's the obvious penciled in choice at the top of the depth chart over there at Viper. Is this his opportunity to really break out and be, the guy over there?
Yeah. So to me, Isaiah Foskey is sort of the make or break guy for this defensive line as a whole, and especially the defensive end position. How he performs is going to dictate whether it's a good group or a really good group. How he performs is going to determine whether or not Notre Dame is going to have an improved pass rush in 2021. And when you look at Isaiah Foskey, Vince, we've talked about this a lot. Like, there's just guys that just kind of, when they walk on the field, they just look different, right? Like, oh, that guy, wow. When Quentin Nelson walked on the field, you're just like, that guy looks different than everybody else, right? Dalen Hayes has some of that to him. There's just players that, Kyle Hamilton, you're just like, they're not supposed to make athletes like that. 6'4", 215, run like that, play free safety, right? You look at those guys and you're just like, wow, that cat's different. Chase Claypool looked like a man amongst boys when he was in college. He just, even when he was younger. Isaiah Foskey is one of those guys that walks in the room and you're like, now that's what a defensive end looks like if you created him in a lab. Yeah. Right? 6'5", incredibly long arms, really broad shoulders, twitchy, powerful, just all the physical tools that you want. And we saw that flash this past season. Despite the fact he played really limited snaps for Notre Dame as sort of a rotation specialist kind of guy, he was second on the team in sacks. He had 4.5 sacks. That's like as many as I think Khalid Kareem had in his senior year. So tons of upside, tons of potential. The question is he going to be able to take that next step? And I expect him to improve. I think we both expect him to improve. Guys rarely take steps back when they're as raw as him, but it's how big of a step is he going to take forward? And that's the key for me, Vince, because, and I don't know if you agree with this, but for me, how he performs is arguably as important to this defense as anybody else in regards to whether or not Notre Dame is going to not only continue being what they've been, but then also take that next step forward. It's going to be about whether or not Isaiah Foskey can be that next man in. They lost Julian Ekwara. Dalen Hayes stepped up, played great. Lost Khalid Kareem. Ogundiji stepped up, played great. Can Foskey do that? Because from an upside standpoint, and this is the part I'm not sure if you agree with, from an upside standpoint, just a raw tool standpoint, the only defensive end Notre Dame has had in the same league as Isaiah Foskey is, from a talent standpoint, is Stephon Tuitt and Aaron Lynch. That's it, in my opinion, just from a raw God-given ability standpoint.
Well, we've seen flashes of what he can do. And I guess my only concern would be, can he do it on a regular basis as the starter? You know what I mean? When those reps increase, when those opportunities increase, can he be consistent, from start to finish? I'm not saying he can't be. I'm just saying that's a question. We just don't know because he hasn't been asked to be that guy as of yet. And so that's really the big question for me. I think, look, I agree with you from a physical standpoint, from, creating him in a lab. There is no question. He's one of those guys I walk by and I'm like, why has that kid never walked into my locker room as a coach? You know what I mean? Like, that would be amazing.
Well, I'm glad he didn't, because then you probably wouldn't be sitting here with me doing this show. So I'm glad you didn't get a guy like that.
I'd ride those coattails, baby, like crazy. But anyway, I think that he has the potential to be one of the best defensive ends that we've seen in an extremely long time. And you put him into that category, when you compare him to those guys, we just need to see it.
I'm just talking tools, right? Yes. I'm not talking he's going to be that good. Because Aaron Lynch didn't tap in his tools the way that Stephon Tuitt did, right? So it's about, can you become that player? And so what does that mean for Isaiah Foskey, right? What does it look like for him to become that next level player? Number one, he's got to get better against the run, right? He's got the size, the length. It's just he tends to play high at times, because let's remember a little bit about Isaiah Foskey's background. He didn't really become a defensive recruit until Notre Dame convinced him to become a defensive recruit. A lot of his focus in high school was on trying to become a collegiate tight end. And I'm glad Notre Dame convinced him, because I think as good of a tight end as he could have been, they just don't make defensive ends like him anymore. And to me, he's a modern NFL defensive end, 6'5", 250, long, twitchy off the edge. I mean, we see teams are just willing to pay a lot of money for guys who are just good at rushing the quarterback. He's got a potential to be really, really good at it. So it's about becoming a more consistent from a technical standpoint, playing with better pad level, understanding angles a little bit better. You know, there's times where you can log him a little bit easier. Logging essentially means you can get to his outside, which allows a bounce. You know, things that Dalen Hayes was great at. You know, yep. Dalen Hayes could dictate, I want you to go inside or I want you to go outside. He could dictate that by how he took on blockers, right?
Yes.
Isaiah needs to learn that. And I think he had a great mentor in front of him when it comes to being a good run player, because that was Dalen's primary number one strength, was he was a really good run defender.
Right.
And so I think he got better, but there's another level he's got to get to. I think the other part of it is a lot of what he did as a pass rusher was just on him being more athletic than the dude across from him. So step number 2 is with increased reps, in increased film, because increased rep in games means increased exposure to your opponents.
Absolutely.
Right? So if you only have 2 pass rush moves by the 5th, 6th, 7th game of the year, teams are going to see that, which is why we saw Isaiah Foskey's production wane a little bit as we got deeper into the year, because teams kind of figured out, okay, this is the move he likes, this is the speed he has, this is the kind of things he's going to do. You can better prepare for that when he's in the game. And so he's going to have to expand on his pass rushing repertoire a little bit, develop a third move, become more effective using, again, angles is also not just about run game, it's about the pass game. So I'm going to use this wide rush off my first 3 steps to get that offensive tackle to overset. Then I'm going to take my inside club hand, throw him and beat him inside. Right. Or maybe I take a quick jab to get him to, sit on that inside foot, and then you can outrun him to the outside. Something that Isaiah has the athleticism to do. Effectively using spin. There's all types of moves that he can learn, that he has, in my opinion, the physicality to learn, that he's going to have to learn and then put into game action. So the nice thing is there's things he can do from just a God-given ability standpoint that nobody else on the roster can do. So that it helps. Now, if he can start to add to that repertoire, that's where the breakout comes. Because I don't want to just say, we're football coaches, right? I don't want to say, well, he's got to get better. Well, where? So, so when we watch film, hopefully we get some access this spring. But when we watch him in the fall, those are the things that I'm looking for that are going to tell me he's taken his game to that next level, to where he's going to make the flashy plays no matter what. He's just too good, especially against 7-8 teams on the schedule. Just they're not going to have tackles athletic enough to defend him. The question is, can he be a consistently dominant player?
Exactly. Yep.
That's the key, because Ogundeji and Dalen Hayes weren't flashy players. They were consistently good. What Isaiah needs to do is be consistently good, but then be more flashy, because he's just got more tools than those guys do. The combination of the length and the athleticism and all that kind of stuff. So that's going to be the key for him, is not just, he could have 9 sacks and not be as good of a player as Dalen Hayes. That's just a fact, because people will obsess over the number of sacks, but that's 9 plays out of 500.
All of them. Yeah.
Right.
Exactly.
It's what's he doing on the run? Is he setting the edge? Is he helping the linebackers be more productive? Is he handling coverage when he needs to? Is he providing pressures beyond sacks? All those type of things. Is he forcing the opponents to game plan away from him in a way that then allows others to thrive? Those are the things that I look for more than just raw production, because this God-given ability, if he gets 500 snaps next year, he's going to put up numbers. Is he putting up dominant numbers? With all due respect, Osmar Bilal, he had 10 tackles for loss. That's 1 less tackle for loss than what Jeremiah Owusu-Koramoah had last year. But not all numbers are created equal.
Yeah, no kidding.
Osmar had a really good year, but Jeremiah was a guy that forced you to game plan away from him.
Right.
And so, that's kind of what I'm looking for. Foskey's the one guy, defensive end, in my opinion, that has the tools to be that kind of guy. And they need him to do it, because that's the only way this defensive end position is going to be as good as it's capable of being.